Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it. It did take 10 years, but I'm here now. And you know, that question I asked him 10 years ago, it's like, Ted, how many people do you think you can introduce me to that I can introduce you back? And that's that's how the conversation started. But Tad's come a long way as well, and he's a great friend. And, we've known each other for a very long time. So what I'll do is I see in the group, I know a few of you guys, and I know a few of you guys have already been to India as well, but I just wanted to sort of show India and start off 2022, hopefully with more positive energy and how we can market the latter half of at least 2022 and 23 going into the years, and how we can do it differently and stand out while we are there, and what we do while we are in this country of 1.2 billion people. And let me address the elephant in the room in saying India is actually, funny enough, open for tourism right now, and they're issuing visas left, right, and center. It's just right now they have a 7-day home quarantine, which doesn't help at all. But going forward, we feel that this wave will get over a little bit faster than the last one. We gave the world Delta, somebody gave Omicron. So, I think we will pass this in a month's time, and hopefully things will start to look up by March or so. And vaccinations in India now, we have given the first dose to 92% of the population. Imagine that's 1.2 billion people that we have. We almost getting everybody second vaccinated, and the boosters have started. So I think we will come out of this quite well, also because we make AstraZeneca, so it does help to make in India and then supply it to our own people. But India is a country of diversity. People say India and Africa, and I always remind people, remember, India is a country in Africa, as a continent. But whatever Africa has Is that better? I got muted for a second. Okay. So, and the diversity, 50 kilometers north, south, east, or west, in any direction that you go in India, the spices change, the language changes. We speak, easily 19 official languages of the country, over 3,000 dialects in the country, 1,800 different languages. So it depends, the diversity depends where you are in the country. For me, even is very new. So let me start by showing a little bit of my history and where it all started. And I'll start by a video covering sort of wildlife of India, and then we'll go from there.
This is wild Karnataka.
All right, who's ready to sign up for the fan?
Imagine this is just one state of India, and we're not even talking the Himalayas, we're not even talking the desert, we're not even talking, we're just talking a rainforest region of southern India in the state of Karnataka. And I started this video because my history is actually in conservation. For over 30 years ago, my grandfather started something called Project Tiger. And the idea of Project Tiger back in 1971 By 1973, they made the first 9 tiger reserves of the country, which being he was head of a government-wide project to protect tigers in the wild. He presented his findings of a census in India that the tigers are declining at the IUCN conference in the late 60s. And that's when sort of the idea of Project Tiger in 1971 came about. So he was the first director and marked all the lines to create the national parks in India. And hence I come from that legacy, which went from conservation and then moved into tourism over the years. My father started a natural history company in the early 80s. And back then in the 80s and 90s, going to India was literally going into the exotic lands of Mowgli. You know, the whole idea of Jungle Book was quite exotic. It took 18 to 20 hours to get to the remote national parks in India on a train. And then, you know, and people would make that journey because it was quite the expedition. Smithsonian's, Natural History Societies, those are the companies sort of that were backing us up with those group movements back in the 80s and 90s. And it was quite an adventure. So depends on where you go in the country, the diversity of wildlife throughout the country, whether it's tigers, leopards, wild dogs, bears, Asiatic lions, wild elephants, one-horned rhinos, red pandas, snow leopards, the diversity is incredible in a place like India. So hence we started making some of our first camps back in 1989. These are some images from sort of all over India. Red panda, which is up in Sikkim. This is a good diversity of maps. So when we talk Africa, we talk about the big 5, and I kind of feel like we already have the big 5 and much, much more. It's just Africa has the vast lands, and we coexist with 1.2 billion people in this country and all that wildlife that we have protected. And as of a few months from today, I think another 3 months or so, we will become the first country in the world to translocate a apex predator from one continent to the other. So they're bringing cheetahs back to India. So there's a relocations of cheetahs happening from South Africa and Namibia coming back to India. Although genetically, if we see the ones cheetahs that used to be in India used to be from Iran, but Iran's not willing to give up theirs. So we're gonna get it from Africa. And there's about 52 that are about to come in the period of 5 years. And they're going to repopulate in India in the wild. And let's see how that project goes. We started making camps, as I mentioned. This is my latest camp called Jamtara Wilderness. This is in a park called Pench National Park. I'm going to share a small video for this as well. A lot of you who will look at that video and say, Amit, there's a lot of influence of Africa there. And I'm like, yeah, I spent about 10 years going to Africa every year. And I covered everything from, you know, Botswana, Namibia, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, South Africa, and then also in South America. And hence I copied a lot of the ideas like the starbeds from Loisaba and Laikipia. You know, I slept there 15 years ago when Tom Sylvester was still sort of the old Loisaba. And I said, Tom, I'm going to copy this idea. And I did. But I created a camp which was not about just sort of ecotourism, of course, sustainability, but also design, a little bit sexy camp, which puts together with the low impact on the environment where we're going to go to. I grew up in an era over 20 years ago when we used to go to national parks and there used to be nobody. We would get there 18 hours by train. Elephants would come pick us up from our room and we would head into the jungle. There was no park gate, nothing like that. And that's as recent as 20, 25 years ago. So I wanted to go back into areas where was still the idea of remote was very much still prevalent. And that way, the exclusivity of the experience could be something extraordinary. So for example, with Jamtara, I went and collected 25 of these old doors on the left that you see, these blue doors from schools in central India, and I did my flooring from it. I went to forest rest houses and collected old chairs and I upped them with leather and suede. This is probably the only blue flooring you'll see in India. I went to graveyard of ships of Asia and I collected 20 tons of wood from the flooring of ships and I did my flooring because this wood has been in water for 20 years. I went to the American Embassy and I collected Art Deco furniture, which graces all the sofas that are there in the lodge. And all this shuts down in end of April. All the flooring comes out, the furniture all closes into the bathroom and we seal it from the top and it goes to bare bones. And we recreate the camp every year in October. So imagine the amount of work sort of that goes in. The star beds, it's a bigger model of something that we call the conservation community model, where over the period of the next, hopefully 5 to 10 years, we will be able to have multiple of these and reunite a corridor between the national park and the buffer zone of the area, because where we are, there's already tons of wildlife that's passing. So there's an opportunity to sleep on a starbed and see some amazing stars, of course, and also amazing wildlife that passes the night, because farmers have slept out there for hundreds of years protecting their crops from wildlife. And we pay the farmer to say, hey, do not chase away the wildlife, let us see that wildlife. And the idea is if we can convert this model multiple times in an area of 80 acres, we will reunite actually a big part of the park. And of course, it's all about the community. The areas that we go to, community is very much a part of what we build, what we do. So we are 90% right now completely run local. As well. And I want to go further to about 98%, hopefully in the next 2 years or so. Pandemic slowed us down a little bit, but I think that would be a key element. In one of our other camps, for example, we're 50% women run, completely from the villages nearby in the area. So nobody really coming from outside to sort of run the camp. But India is not just about that. India is about the forts and palaces. I come from Rajasthan, a town called Jodhpur, which is the blue city of India. And a lot of these forts and palaces which have been converted into beautiful, stunning hotels on the inside. One of my favorite, this is Mihirgarh, 9-room castle outside Jodhpur, about 40 minutes away, and has one of the best collection of Marwari horses, the horses that used to ride for the king. This is Devigarh, right outside Udaipur. Jaisalmer. And we talked about the blue city a second ago. My house is somewhere, traditional home is somewhere right in the middle where you usually go for a meal while you're there with my grandmother. But the idea is all these, think of, if you sell Africa, think of Jodhpur as Marrakesh and the Medina and the closed walls. Jodhpur has a very similar feel to it where you can walk inside the walled city and have these riads, in our case, we call them havelis, that you can venture into. And then you can end in a beautiful palace like the Lake Palace. But at the end of the day, it's all about people. For example, this is a 10-room homestay run by a lovely family that's on the top right. So anywhere that you go in India, it's all about the people. These are all our guides from all over the place. We have Gulzar on the bottom, who's our Ladakh guide. We have Jeremy, who's actually a 6'2" white guy from Minnesota, who's our guide in Varanasi. It's quite random, but he has amazing knowledge of all religions of the world. Hence, the comparison makes it quite interesting. So with him, we have created amazing walks in this holiest city of India called Varanasi, where the Ganges flows. So if you're sort of ready for your client to sort of take it up a notch and to the next level, well, Varanasi is that place where we can do extraordinary things. You can get up in the morning, go on the banks of Ganges and do yoga and do a general slow start to Varanasi. But if you're ready for some amazing experiences, there's something we call the Death and Rebirth Walk, which starts at 8 p.m. It ends at midnight. You meet cannibals. It's sort of next level. So you really need to brief the client. But you will come out of that walk thinking for the next couple of days, it's like, what just happened? And that's the attitude, that's the experience we want the client to be able to come out with and change their way of how they look at India in many different ways. Beyond this, we've developed a lot of relationship with during festivals and tribes. Let me first touch upon tribes. Over the last 8 to 9 years, we've worked with many photographers and many small groups where we've furnished these relationships with tribes, whether it's Jimmy Nelson, who wrote the book before the tribes vanish away, or Art Wolves, or any of these sort of photographers of the world. And we've gone with 2 to 4 to small number of clients into these remote regions. This one is particularly in Gujarat, where they've become a part of sort of us in a long way. We have an amazing guide, for example, here in this case, Manisha, who's in Gujarat, where every month we take care of their cattle, provide fodder, do something or the other for them. So it's not just we get in there and it's a click. No other tourists are going in that area. The idea is these people have never been almost photographed before as well. For example, this particular family is a family of 12. They have about 80 camels that they take care of. They survive on selling camel milk. And then you sort of walk the nomadic life with them in Gujarat. So that takes that experience to sort of very different. And people need to be ready to rough it out a little bit for those 1 or 2 days, because the experience is like that. Whether it's south of India, this is the Rhino Horn tribe in central India where our lodges are. In Orissa, the Bon tribe, where the beads look like very similar to the African tribes, if you see. Again, we are back into Gujarat, so it depends on where they are. If the client is sort of ready for that, we'll create a camp in the middle of nowhere for that, and we'll touch upon that very briefly at the end as well. Kumbh Mela, one of my favorite festivals, and Kurt here is going to smile for a second there. But it's 100 million people will come and take a dip in the Ganges in 2025. Are you ready for that or not? There's a question, and I love it. Every couple of years there's a Kumbh that'll happen, or we'll create a camp for this. And amazing photography. Call it India's Burning Man. Very quirky kind of experiences. Spending 3 or 4 nights in something like this sort of changes you, because the experiences that you have there, you will not have anywhere in the world. It's one of those sort of bucket list things to do. We worked with various groups, photographers, to create experiences. So I'll give you an example here. I am sitting here with 4 clients. 2 of the sadhus in the right speak perfect English. They're like, yeah, we used to be lawyers. We quit everything. We live under a tree now. It's been 9 years. And bam, that's your conversation starter. And that's where, the experience starts to change and transformational experiences start to happen at that point. We have a lot of access into this world because of people that we know. This is Rome Baba. His actual name is actually quite long, but he lived in Rome for 10 years and speaks Italian and Hindi, very random, but amazing with clients, amazing to work with clients, and just sort of gets us access into that inside world, which we didn't. And then my aunt, she's ex sort of travel industry, been to the virtuosos of the world over 20 years ago, and quit everything and lives under the Himalayas now, and said, this is it for me. She's contributed herself to spirituality, devoted completely, but then she'll come when we create a camp, and to share her knowledge of spirituality. These are the type of camps that we create. So all showers and running water and things like that. So it's not roughing it by any standards. This is the Hornbill Festival. Happens every year. I've been going to it now for about 14 years. I haven't been in 3 years, but pandemic and all. But this is again an extraordinary festival in the northeast of the country, which happens. I've been going to it for about 9 years, and it's an extraordinary. You don't think you're in India. 13 remote tribes come together to share this amazing sort of different things happen at the festival. And it's not just about music. It's about sharing culture. It's about food. It's about different games that they play as well. So this is again an experience that you can combine with the one-horned rhinos of the northeast of India. Sufi Spirit Festival. Actually, Kurt's been to one of these with me at the first time I actually went. Imagine Sufism originated in Central Asia, India, and all those parts. So Sufi musicians from India invite Sufi musicians from all over the world to come and play. So imagine in a setting in a remote fort in Rajasthan, people coming from Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Iran, Iraq, Mali, Tunisia, Morocco to come and play in this amazing setting on the invite of the Indian Sufi musicians. And only for 150 to 175 guests, a small camp is set up. I will play a small video of that.
ساري مال باوم شيخي كردم بچاوم هتا كوني بندلبوي قول بيدو مدلناوم شيري في روايا كادقا تدو آوان شيري في روايا كادقا تدو آوان يلا مسافر يلا ماشين كوتو سردشتي جيجو وي نازق نازق دين السيرة ودشتي ماشي سرقو ما يخوشا اروقمي وي باشتي ماشي سرقو ما يخوشا اروقمي وي باشتي
This happens every February, and you can imagine the extraordinary sort of experiences that you can have there. Having said that, it hasn't happened in 3 years because of the pandemic, but I wouldn't, I really think this is going to come back in 2023, and this was again going to be every February for 3 days, and you can combine it with a bigger trip of India. I jumped to this slide because this is something that I ventured into about 10 odd years ago with a really dear friend of mine, to go into the Himalayas in the winter. Usually people didn't used to go to the Himalayas in the winter only for this frozen river trek purposes. We went there to photograph, amazing place to be in the Himalayas and Ladakh in the winter, monasteries, monks, nobody else there. But one of our main reasons sort of going up there at that time of the year was to see snow leopards in the wild. Back when we started doing this 10, 12 years ago, we were camping for many years, and we hardly could get clients on the trip because it was cold and it was a harder trip. And over the last 4 or 5 years, what has happened is there is a lodge that has come about, and we're seeing some amazing snow leopard sightings that has happened. So this has almost become 20% of my business up there. I need about 10 days for somebody to sort of do this trip. There is not a lot of trekking involved, but it's more good if you can do a good hike in your backyard in the United States. You're good to do this trip. Yes, it gets cold, but you're inside at night and it's not that bad. In the daytime, it's -4, -5 degrees centigrade, maybe even +2 degrees centigrade, depends on the time of the year. This is a lodge called the Snow Leopard Lodge, only 11 rooms run by the community. And the funds sort of go back into the community, and we have generated about $50,000 over the period of 5 years for not just this community, but many other communities in the area, all generated from tourism dollars. So for us, our give back element is quite big, even in tiger area or in snow leopard areas, because wildlife that's something very close to our heart. These are the trackers you're with. On the right is Norbu, who sort of owns this community lodge. This is it, on the top left. So the idea of remote is right here. If you can do that, if you have plans for that. And you can easily combine this with tigers, the Taj Mahal, or doing something completely different. Here's a small snippet of the snow leopard stuff. Snow leopards, ibex, lama. let me share a 13-second clip from day before yesterday. I just put this in. That's a pack of wolves going after us. It's quite an amazing sighting that just happened, which is, we haven't seen wolves that close proximity to snow leopards in a while. Sadly, there's no tourists right now, so we can't show it to anybody. It's our guides just having fun up there right now. So that's the bit about snow leopards. And we have an office in Sri Lanka as well. We have 3 people that are based in Colombo, and we do very similar experiences there, and that's a whole presentation on its own. I'm gonna close off with one last video here. So, you know, once in a while you get clients that I would say we do about 2 or 3 of these a year now, that there's no boundary of what you're going to do for them. It's all about the experience. And for me, it's very good that if you share with me, hey, Amit, our clients are, they went to, for example, they went to Botswana, they stayed at Vumbura Plains, and they did the Jao bit, they stayed at Element House in Cape Town, they did this Old Donio, or they did one of these sort of other camps in Africa or in South America. They went to Explorer Lodges, or they did the Inca Terra here, they went to Titicaca. Give me experiences that they've been to. Give me an idea. I've been fortunate to be well-traveled, so it gives me a good idea of what the client generally likes. And then we'll create something where there isn't something that you can find online, an experience that cannot be bought, period. And it is for those kind of people that these experiences are created. Now, this trip that I'm going to show you was the last one we did right before the pandemic, where it was done for 3 ladies from Australia. They didn't even know till 7 days before they were going to India, because it was their son's 60th birthday present to the mother. And all we knew was, Amit, they like horses, they own stud farms, she's into construction in Australia, and they would love to tick off the usual bits of India, but also do something, but they only have 7 days, and they will come all the way from Australia for 7 days to India. And then we create something where they don't even know what's being created for them. And this can go in many different directions depending on the interest of the client. I'm going to share this video. Sorry, I keep stopping and explaining what's happening. So they landed in Jaipur. They stayed in a beautiful old palace, you know, the Rambagh Palace, very popular. And they did some, you know, exclusive things in Jaipur as well. But the first 2 days was to tick off the touristic bits out of your system. So that's what. Then we flew into a remoter part in Rajasthan, into a place called Jawai, which is also quite popular, where leopards live amongst the community. The landscape is amazing, and you can see literally sometimes people going up to a temple where there's a leopard walking down. It's an extraordinary sort of experience while you're there. So we spent 1 night there, and then we got on some Marwari horses. These are the horses that are natively from Rajasthan, ride for the king back in the day, and we started riding into the wilderness for the next 2 days. brought all the experiences to them. So for example, we brought Rom Baba with the yoga, my aunt was a spiritual leader. We, of course, the riding, chef for a full culinary experience for those 2 nights in the middle of nowhere. There is nobody till far, far away. So a camp like that sort of can be created anywhere in the country. It moves based on the experience of the client, whether it's regarding tribes, whether we are bringing a balloon out there, it's more for entertainment, we bring a Bollywood crew out there. So I said these experiences can be done in many different ways. I don't call these trips sort of high end, but high experiential, because the experience quality is quite high. Earlier, I talked about Jodhpur, the Blue City, and the Blue City is one of the most magnificent forts of India. And in the daytime, there's about 5,000 people visit the fort, but there's nobody at night. So we took over the fort at night, and we had about 100 people perform the history of the fort with the curator. It gives you an idea of experience. I mean, of course, these clients don't come every day. We get 2 a year. We'd be very happy. But I like getting my hands dirty. Let's put it that way. I want to be able to create things and experiences which are very authentic, but for different clients, different experiences. And I'll just end with sort of by saying, if you ever want to know a little bit more about the conservation history of my family, there's a film called Tigerland, which premiered at Sundance about 4 years ago now. And you will probably find it on Discovery Go. Me or Tad can also send you a link for the film. I think that's about it. I think I've taken 40 minutes of your time. Thank you for your time.
Amit, awesome presentation as always. I'm ready to get on a plane after seeing this now for the second or third time. It just gets better and better. Guys, if you have questions, comments, there's been some great chatter on the chat, but feel free to unmute or to send through questions on the chat, and we can answer them now, or you can always contact Amit or I after the webinar. Let's see, anybody here? Mouth watering is right, Christine. And there was a question about Amit about having a film crew do a similar filming as you did for these clients. Obviously, that's something you can do. Kurt mentioned that you did that for him on one of his trips for Wildland years ago. Yeah. I mean, if somebody wants to sort of white label something, bring their crew out and have something for sort of marketing in the future, that's very much possible. We work quite a bit, as you can tell from our videos, we work a lot with film crews and drone operators, and doing different stuff. So absolutely, whether it's for even for tigers, we actually have a whole subdivision that works with Discovery and BBC Wildlife to do all their sort of shoots in India, and they are pretty much at our lodge the entire time. We have Disney at our lodge now for 2 years, filming the next sort of mother and cubs and tigers. That's for wildlife, and of course for culture, we can do different experiences. If you have a client that's already coming, it always helps to sort of tag it along, so the experiences are already being done, and it's just a matter of filming it. So yeah, no, absolutely. And we can also help facilitate maybe you have the chief cameraman sort of come in and we provide the assistance and the gear on the ground. So that's also possible. Kurt, you're a very good student. I see you raised your hand. Do you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I mean, I knew Amit would present India in the most beautiful way. And I just wanted to add how his company as an operator truly is one of the best operators we've worked with anywhere in the world. I think a lot of us already know Amit and would expect that. But, a country like India, it can be so intimidating and challenging in so many ways, to have advice from experts in his office that, reps that we got assigned to who would really hear what we're asking for, what our clients looking for, and create an itinerary. I mean, we could do it directly with Amit, and then many cases we work directly with folks in the office. And so, just planning the right itinerary in a place as big as India that people want to see and do as much as possible, it just has to be scaled back. And then the service that people got on the ground, again, in India, people want to be have that balance between being, they're handheld and having freedom. And it just was a perfect balance the way it worked. And they, this is not necessarily uncommon, but in India, especially, to be given a telephone upon arrival, to know that you have that connection if you need it for independent travelers was really reassuring and very useful in many cases. So I don't know, I wanted to put that out there because I always enjoyed working with Amit and all the staff that he has, in the office and out in the field.
Thanks, Kurt. Appreciate it so much. I saw a question there that does Encounters Asia work with direct clients? I actually don't. It's more, I would say 97% I work with B2B. I mean, it'll come from a reference of a friend or something like that, then it'll be different, but we don't have any channels to sort of, you can see our website, they're not geared to market direct to clients. So that's not something that we're doing. We want to give you all the power to market. We want to give you all the materials to market and go to your clients. So it's easier to deal with the agent than to deal with the clients. So I love to deal with the clients on ground when they're already there.
I've got a question here from Chris. For someone brand new to India with no experience, where does one have to go see and experience in order to be able to effectively and expertly sell the destination?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The thing is, you will see hundreds of different itineraries for India, and you know what? 90% of them are going to look the same. Majority of the time, they'll take the Taj Mahal, they do the Goenka Triangle, they're doing all that. And what I'm saying to you is, absolutely, let's do a part of that because your client is going to ask you about that. But let's split the trip and then do 14 days sort of on a fam to India, 14, 15 days. Remember, you're going as far as 14 hours flight to get to India. Give it at least 2 weeks. Don't go on one of those 7-8 day fams because it just doesn't work. India, you need to do it a little bit slowly to absorb India, what there is. And yes, let's stick to Taj Mahal, but let's get out and get into one of the wildlife parks and combine it with a palace and be able to see the Taj Mahal and be able to do religion in Varanasi differently. And then you can have an overall good experience of talking about anything. So if you go to Jaipur or a Jodhpur, for example, then you can almost get a grip on what a palace hotel feels like, what an experience in a semi-big city looks like in Rajasthan. What does getting out in the desert really mean in India? Taj Mahal, I have many clients, fams that come and they said, Amit, Taj Mahal we can do anytime. At the end of the day, it's a monument. It is beautiful, no question about it. But yes, everybody sort of goes there and ticks off their list. But then Varanasi is something that changes you. And that is what makes you fall in love with India. So always do something, one thing in that program that will change you, you think. And let your sort of operator or me or somebody else make you understand that what is the experiences that you loved in the world and what your clients generally like. And maybe they'll turn around and say, hey, my clients also all go to Africa majority of the time. They love the wildlife in India, in Africa. And I've had this from many people who've spoken about this, that a very good friend of mine, Peter Allison, who is now part of Natural Selection, used to be Wilderness Travel back in the day. He came on his honeymoon and with his wife, we did a balanced trip for him where it was not balanced. It was definitely not balanced. It was 20% culture and it was 80% wildlife because that's what he wanted to do. That's his passion from Africa. But after coming to India, if I speak to him today, he's like, Amit, if I go back to India and if I was an agent selling India, I would mix the two so much more because even though I love wildlife in Africa and all that, there's the coexistence of people, religion, all this stuff in India is so different to what is in Africa that yes, you do see the tigers. Yes, you do see the leopards. Yes, you see all that and snow leopards for that matter, but then the culture also changes you. And there is so much more India as a diversity. So try not, and I talk about this to Tad all the time, what kind of a fam should we have? Should we have all wildlife for 10 or 12 days? Just go to the tiger parks and out? Maybe that's good for people who've done India 5 times. But for a first timer to India, absolutely, let's do the palace. Let's do a little bit of religion. Let's do the Taj Mahal, maybe. We can think about that. And then go into one of the remoter tiger parks and not the ones that, OATs of the world are doing and sending thousands and thousands of packs. Let's do something different and take you closest to Africa experience in India. And it will not just be the tigers that change you. It will be the people, the community, that's everything around these parks. And we say this in Africa when a rhino goes missing, for example, there's an outcry. Who is the one who's doing the outcry? I always remember that. I always think about this because when rhinos go missing, there's only a few conservationists that are shouting. The conservationists, the tourism lobby, and that's about it. If you talk to the normal person in Cape Town, Johannesburg, Mombasa, Nairobi, majority of them have never been on a safari. It's completely the opposite in India. As we are growing up as a young kid, we're exposed to a sanctuary or national park at a very young age. And it's ingrained in our system to sort of protect wildlife in the long term. And that's the only reason we have over 50 tiger reserves in the country. If one famous tiger goes missing, we had 1 million people tweet, 10,000 children take a vigil out to Prime Minister's gate and ask, where is our tiger? Hence the sense of accountability is the vote bank. And the vote bank in Africa is missing. When something goes missing in Africa, it's only sort of the Westerners or the lodge owners who are talking about it. In India, it's the public talking about it. And that makes all the difference. And all these stories are amazing to hear when you're there because you see it in person. Anyways, that was a long answer to a short question.
I love it. The passion is amazing. As contagious from you, Amit, but clearly, the Indian people as well have this passion for their wild places and their wildlife. Speaking of the fam, Kat asking about when we're planning to do it. We're looking at dates potentially in April this year and November this year. And we'll definitely be visiting a tiger reserve and staying at one of Amit's lodges as well. So if you're interested in snow leopards, Amit, that season is typically the first 3 months of the year.
October to April. If you want to sort of go on a snow leopard fam, just sort of tell me. And we have sort of groups that leave all the time, and I can try to work out a very, very special deal and put you on one of those. So it's easier for me to do that than to put together a complete snow leopard fam of a group. Because this way, if a group is already going, your cost is subsidized anyways. So it would help me. So just reach out if that is of your interest.
Amit, can you hear me?
Yeah, Hope.
Oh, thank you so much for being part of Kusini. I was so excited when Tad told me about it. I always remember coming to ATTA and coming up to you, and you would show me these incredible videos of the Hornbill Festival. So I know that you do amazing things, and you know that I've been to India many times. Yeah. My question is, and you talked a little bit about it in the opening, do you think that this quarantine lift for 7 days will be lifted shortly? I mean, I was on my way to India very shortly, and of course I can't now because I'm not going to quarantine for 7 days.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, can you talk about, in regards to the tigers with the national parks, you still have the permits that you can buy at an extra cost so that the client can be there for the entire time and have more access to different areas of the park. You have that, correct?
Yeah. That's almost 50% of my business now, actually. So, for example, the photography groups that were all coming January, and rightly so, you said, Hope, because of the 7-day quarantine, everything got canceled and now got moved to end of March, were all based on full day permit trips. And it costs, so let me explain something about India's national parks. Generally, you go to the national park in the morning and right at sunrise, and you come out around 10:30. The park actually closes between 10:30 and 11, depending on where you are in the country. And then you re-enter about 2:30 to 3 p.m., and then it closes right at sunset. You're, depending on the park you're in, you're given a zone or a route. If you are definitely in one of the more popular parks like Ranthambore or Corbett, you definitely strictly have to adhere to that, whereas central India is way more relaxed. If you go to Kanha or Pench or any of those regions, they really don't have a route that you have to go to. You can pay for something called a full day permit, which ranges anywhere from $1,600 to $1,800 for the day for a Jeep, and you can seat up to 4 people in that Jeep. You enter 15 minutes before everybody in the park. You are in the park all day. You don't have any restrictions of the route or zone or where you need to be. And you come out 15 minutes after everybody in the evening. So hence you have the park to yourself that afternoon for those 5-6 hours just to yourself, which makes a big difference in many cases. Imagine everybody's on an amazing tiger sighting, mother and two cubs sitting by the road or on a water hole or something like that. And every Jeep has to leave around 9:30. They need to start moving out slowly. You're there. You don't have to move. And that makes such a big difference when it comes to photography. So absolutely, that permit is very much there, and I hope it takes you closer to sort of making it an exclusive experience, I think, in India. Secondly, you asked about the lifting of the ban. We are almost peaking now on the third wave. And they've been talking about this the entire time in the news, and I've been listening to many groups as well, where we feel that before the end of January, we will reach the third wave and start to come the other side. A lot of the reactions are knee-jerk reactions in India, sadly. That's what happens. At the end of the day, our vaccination is so good. The rate is amazing, actually, that they're delivering vaccines by drones to remote villages in India. That's how good the program is working right now. And elections are coming up in February. So that's a very big one for them. They do not want to shut the country down because elections is something very important in India. So I feel that in a month's time, everything should go back to normal. And when we opened this time, there was a restriction that if you came via Europe at-risk countries, you had to quarantine those 7 days and all that. I think when it lifts, it'll lift altogether. Of course, I can't predict anything and how the wave will go, but looking at what happened in South Africa and looking at how now Europe is now starting to treat this as a flu, and France and UK are opening up and saying, hey, life needs to move on. I think by March would be a safe bet, hope, to say that life will be back to normal. So if you want to book something in March, April, that'd be fine. I would say early February might be too early. Last week, February is still okay. That's the way I think. And I remember you were on your way. I've been speaking to Mohan a lot, and we did a few trips together recently in the jungles together. So yeah, we keep talking about you there.
Thank you, Amit.
Yeah, and Usha asked, how do you get to Jamtara? And Jamtara is about 3 hours from this airport called Nagpur. There's multiple flights a day from Mumbai or Delhi. But also remember, Jamtara in Pench also connects very well to 4 other different national parks: Tadoba, Satpura, Kana, or even 6 hours to Bandhavgarh. All the other ones are anywhere from 4 to 5 hours. Bandhavgarh is about 6 hours. So whenever you're going into central India, if you're going to make it that far, combine 2 camps, at least, and spend 2 or 3 nights in each camp. So that way you have a completely different experience, because Pench, for example, is a completely teak forest, whereas Kana is a completely sal forest and a great other diversity. Pench is famous for leopards and wild dogs and of course tigers as well. Whereas in Kana, you will get much more bigger diversity of tigers. The distribution is quite amazing, but also the Barasinga, also the bison, also all these the Indian gaur. So try to combine 2 parks and 2 different experiences, which I think people will love in India.